Imagine waking up tomorrow and finding out that two countries on opposite sides of the world could influence oil prices, global politics, and even the possibility of a major international crisis. One of those countries is the United States. The other is Iran. Today, when people hear America and Iran, they usually think of tension, arguments, sanctions, military incidents, and decades of distrust. But here's the surprising part. America and Iran were not always enemies. In fact, there was a time when the relationship looked completely different. So what changed? How did two countries that once worked together become rivals? To understand that, we need to travel back more than a century. Long before modern tensions, Iran was known as Persia, one of the oldest civilizations in human history. For thousands of years, Persia played an important role in trade, culture, and politics. Then, in the early 1900s, something was discovered that would change everything: oil. At first, many people didn't realize how valuable oil would become. But as cars, factories, ships, and airplanes spread around the world, oil became one of the most important resources on Earth. Suddenly, foreign powers became very interested in Iran. Many Iranians believed their country's resources were benefiting foreign companies more than ordinary citizens. That frustration slowly grew, and eventually, it would lead to one of the most important turning points in modern Iranian history. In the early 1950s, Iran's Prime Minister, Mohammad Mossadegh, wanted greater national control over oil resources. This move created major international tensions. In 1953, a coup removed Mossadegh from power. The Shah of Iran became much more powerful afterward. For many Americans at the time, this was viewed through the lens of Cold War politics. For many Iranians, it became a symbol of foreign interference. Even today, people still debate the long-term consequences of that event. But one thing is certain: it left a lasting mark on how many Iranians viewed the United States. For years afterward, Iran modernized rapidly. Large infrastructure projects appeared, cities expanded, industries grew, but not everyone supported the changes. Some people believed the government had become too powerful. Others felt traditional values were being ignored. Political opposition increased, public frustration grew, and by the late 1970s, the pressure was becoming impossible to ignore. Then everything changed. Massive demonstrations spread across the country. Millions of people demanded change. The Shah eventually left Iran. A revolution transformed the government. The Islamic Republic of Iran was established. For many Iranians, this was a historic turning point. For the United States, it created enormous uncertainty. The relationship between the two countries suddenly entered a completely new phase, and things were about to become even worse. Later in 1979, a group of Iranian students entered the American embassy in Tehran. Dozens of Americans were taken hostage. The situation became international news. For over a year, the crisis dominated headlines. Families waited, governments negotiated, the world watched. In America, the event shocked the public. In Iran, opinions varied greatly, but regardless of perspective, the hostage crisis became one of the defining moments in US-Iran relations. Trust collapsed, and rebuilding it would prove extremely difficult. Only a year later, another major crisis began. Iraq invaded Iran. The conflict turned into a devastating war that lasted for years. Hundreds of thousands of people were affected. Entire communities suffered. The war became one of the deadliest conflicts of the late 20th century, and it further shaped Iran's view of the world around it. As years passed, tensions remained. Economic sanctions were imposed. Restrictions increased. Political disagreements continued. The relationship became defined by mistrust. Each side often viewed the other as a threat, and every new crisis seemed to make reconciliation more difficult. One issue eventually became larger than almost everything else. Iran maintained that its nuclear activities were peaceful. Many countries worried about the possibility of weapon development. Years of negotiations followed. Diplomats spent countless hours trying to reach agreements. Sometimes progress was made, sometimes talks broke down. The issue became one of the most discussed topics in international politics. In recent years, regional conflicts, military incidents, cybersecurity concerns, and political disagreements have continued to influence relations. There have been moments of diplomacy and moments of serious tension. The situation remains complex, and it continues to evolve. So why are America and Iran rivals today? The answer isn't a single event. It's a story that stretches across decades. Oil, politics, revolutions, wars, diplomacy, and generations of mistrust, understanding that history doesn't solve the problem, but it helps explain why the relationship became so complicated. Because sometimes, the biggest international rivalries aren't created in a day, they're built slowly, one decision at a time.